All right, let's go to Jeanette in Chi-Town in Chicago. What's up, Jeanette?
Hi, Dr. Delony. It's a pleasure finally getting a hold of you.
It's a pleasure to talk to you. What's up?
Lots. So I'm not sure where do I begin.
Cannonball. Cannonball, right in the middle.
All right. So I'm here in Chicago. Actually, it's an hour outside of Chicago, Illinois. But for viewers and listeners, Chicago, I guess, is a better reference point. So I moved out here originally from New York about a year and a half ago. I have a blended family, and it's becoming extremely, excruciatingly painful for myself, my children, my marriage, the entire move. And I feel that it's been perhaps a mistake. Not sure how to undo the damage or how to move on.
What brought you to the Chicago area from New York?
About 8 years ago, I met my current husband, and he lives here. And so we've decided throughout different options that it would be best for us to raise our daughter together. And it was easier for me to get a transfer from my job at the time out here as opposed to him moving to New York because he had a job with pension and all sorts of benefits that were not transferable.
Hey, Jeanette, you are being so careful in your language. Can I be super honest with you?
Please.
You did something that you're not proud of, right? What is it?
Yes.
What did you do? I can feel it, how professional and carefully crafted. Do you work for a large company?
Yes.
Yes, you do. I could tell by the way y'all communicate with one another. And so, just cannonball in. What happened?
I had to leave my older children with their dad in New York.
How old?
Well, my oldest is 21 now, and the middle one is 17. But it was a year and a half ago, and nonetheless, it's very difficult.
Man. So let me back out. So 8 years ago, you met somebody new. Y'all had a child together.
Well, not right away.
Right, but you left your previous marriage.
Right.
And you met somebody new. Y'all had a kid.
Yes.
But this guy lived in Chicago, and so it was a long distance thing?
It was a long distance relationship for a very long time, up until a year and a half ago.
What changed a year and a half ago?
It became very difficult for me to raise our little one by myself. I was juggling work, daycares, and my older children were champs. They actually helped in a lot when I couldn't. When the daycare was closed due to COVID, they would always help me out so I could go to work. And
why'd you take the opportunity for them to keep helping and being a part of their family away from them?
Not sure. My current husband kept saying, well, it's not fair that I get to be a part-time dad. And
here's what's not fair. All of this is predicated on, man. All of this is predicated on the most important thing in this relationship is your husband's job. And for him to keep his fantasy little world, he has to break up one unit that's already been broken up once because it's not fair. What's not fair is he married somebody and said, choose me over your children. That's not fair. Because anybody who marries somebody who's already has kids via another marriage has to know those kids have to come first.
Right.
They have to. Your 17-year-old's a child. She looks tough and she acts tough and she's been through hell and back and she grew up in New York, so she probably walks a little taller. She's a child.
Mm-hmm.
And that child needs her mama, right?
Yes. Even though we try to FaceTime as much as we can.
That's not a thing. That's not a thing.
It's not.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a thing.
I bring them out here as much as I can, as much as I possibly can with our crazy schedules, and it's just not the same. And he doesn't seem to understand.
Oh, he understands. He doesn't care, Jeanette. He doesn't care. Because that was part of your old world, and he is your new world, and so he doesn't care. I think there's more to this. Tell me I'm wrong, and I'm perfectly okay being wrong. Kids are one thing, but I think you've run into a stark reality after 6 or 7 years of fantasy land, which is like long distance relationships. It's so fun. You can be super intimate electronically or on the phone. It's very different when homeboy won't pick up his underwear, or it's very different when, like, why do we have to be so loud or so quiet or whatever the thing is. I'm wondering if you moved to Chicago and you, in your marriage that you've been in for a long time, are wondering, what have I done? And the kids are just a part of that. Is that fair?
Yes. That's very fair.
So what do you do now?
That's the good question. I don't know, because it seems that since I've been here, our marriage has, and our relationship and communication has gotten worse.
Mm-hmm.
We hardly ever talk. He just comes in, goes right to his phone, goes to bed, starts all over again next day. We have different work schedules, and we hardly ever see each other now. And it's funny because when I lived in New York and we had a long distance relationship, he made time to see us. We would FaceTime, we would talk, we would communicate a lot more than we communicate now. And I've called him, said, hey, we should really set some time aside to talk about our future, what we need to do. And he always gets either defensive or loud, and the conversation has to end.
So he responds like a child.
Yes, and I've said this to him. I said, please don't be a man-child.
Yeah.
He doesn't like that term.
Well, I mean, like, I have a 7-year-old, and sometimes she'll come in just and respond really loud. And it's disrespectful, and we deal with it. But also, she's 7. It's pretty normal.
Right.
It's not normal for a grown-up with a job and a wife and a kid.
Right.
I want you to be very,
we've also
very...
done therapy.
Do what?
We've also done therapy, and after a while, it just dies out.
I want you to be very careful about dragging your kids into this, because I don't think they're the issue. I don't want you looking at him and saying, I have to move back because of my kids. Because that's not wholly true.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to have to deal with the shame of 2 marriages that didn't work. A lost decade almost. I mean, you know all those things, right? All those feelings you will have, whether they're true or not true, it's all going to come. It probably already all is crashing in on you. Yeah. And him deciding to sue for custody and all that mess and splitting time across 2 cities and 2 states. I mean, all that. It's just, it is the reality, right?
Right.
The way you're describing it, I don't see a smooth transition unless he just lets y'all go, and which he might just do. He might want his little peaceful world where he can just have an imaginary girlfriend on the phone and via FaceTime, but he gets to do whatever he wants whenever he wants to in his regular life.
Right.
Maybe, but he may have been around. How old's your daughter?
The youngest one is 5. She just turned 5.
Okay. Whew, golly, that poor girl.
Yeah.
All right, so I've been talking a lot. How can I help you?
That's the question. How do I fix this mess? How do I go about fixing this? Do I do more talking to him? Do we do more marriage counseling? He doesn't seem to respond well on the marriage counseling front. He's been, and this should have been, I guess, a red flag for me, but he had previously been married twice. But we always ignore those little pesky red flags.
I mean, those are huge, giant, wavy flags, right?
Yeah.
They're not little pesky red ones. It sounds like the thing you haven't done through all of this is ask yourself, what does Jeanette want and what does Jeanette need? And you've got to start with that question. Because you're going to counseling and you don't really have a definitive destination of where you're trying to head with this relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you're stuck in a freeze cycle, in the fight, flight, or freeze. You're just kind of stuck. And I can imagine that's unnerving because you're probably a gangster at work, right? You're probably really good at your job. Is that fair?
I would assume that.
Just say yes. Just say yes. You do good at your job. And then it's so perplexing as to why this stuff all doesn't work. And it's easy to just sit and drop your shoulders, kind of put your belly out and just kind of sit almost like Buddha and just be like, I don't know what to do. And maybe we'll go to counseling. Maybe we'll go to the gym. Maybe we'll start reading a book. Like, there's not really any goal other than not this. And so it's kind of like getting in your car and being like, I just don't want to be here. I'm just going to drive. And then you both end up in different places. And so I think you've got to ask, where do we want to go with this? What do I want to do with my relationships? What do I want to do with my kids? What's the best thing for this 5-year-old little girl? What's the best thing for my 17-year-old girl who's about to transition into full-blown adulthood? And my influence over her will transition from you have to, from one of force to one of influence, one of partnership. And that's a tough transition. You remember those days. That's a tough transition for any of us.
Oh, yeah.
You got to ask yourself, what are those situations going to be like? How do we navigate that? What do I want? What do I need in that season? I mean, that's where you got to start. And then you have to be very, very clear with this dude, your husband. Here's what I need. Here's what I want. And it sounds like, if I'm being honest, you've probably heard me say this over and over on the show, behavior's the language. It sounds like he's being very clear. Jeanette, I don't care what you want. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you feel. This is what I'm going to do. And you can't be married like that. You can't be married like that. I'm terrible at gambling. I'm awful at it. Like comically awful at it. I'm wrong almost all the time. But I'd be willing to bet that he's talking to somebody else too. Given the way you described how he interacts with you and that he's got more of a relationship with his phone and he's got a multi-year history, and it would not surprise me if there's other people that he's communicating with in some shape, form, or fashion. And I think it's just sitting down and getting to the bottom of that. And nobody wakes up and says, man, I really want to be divorced twice. It's hard. It's really, really hard. I've got some of my close friends in the world. They've experienced this, and it's just tough. It's shape-shifting, because I thought people who got divorced twice were those people, not me. And here we are. And you got to own the reality that this is where we are. And then what are we going to do next? I think you got to go sit with somebody, whether it's a close friend there in Chicago, whether it's a therapist, somebody in your local community, and say, I need help sifting through the nonsense. What do I want and what do I need? And then I got to be real clear about saying those things out loud, very directly, to my ex-husband, to my kids, to my husband, and to the mirror. And then you got to stick to them. But I think the running and the hiding and the I don't know and the ambiguity, you got to stop. You got to stop, because you're bringing your kids underwater too. Call anytime, Jeanette. I'm so sorry what you're going through.